It was just another scorching afternoon in the bustling city, and 17-year-old Aisha stood quietly at the edge of the grand marble hallway, clutching a tray of fresh juice with trembling hands. She wore a plain faded shalwar kameez, her hair tied back in a loose braid, and her eyes scanning the floor, careful not to make eye contact with the people who looked through her as if she were invisible. In this massive mansion full of crystal chandeliers, silk curtains, and designer furniture, she was only known as the new maid. But Aisha wasn't just any maid. Behind those quiet eyes was a storm of emotions, buried memories, and a longing for something she couldn't quite name. Orphaned at a young age and raised in a small village by an old caretaker who passed away last winter, Aisha had learned to survive. When a distant relative sent her to the city for work, she thought, maybe this was her chance to earn a little, maybe even save enough to one day study again. She never imagined this job would turn her life upside down. The house she worked in belonged to none other than Meher Ali Shah, one of the country's most powerful and glamorous women, a business tycoon, a public figure, and known for her icy demeanor. Meher was the last person you'd associate with warmth or motherhood. Her face appeared on TV screens and magazine covers, always perfectly poised, always distant. But for Aisha, Meher was just Madam, a woman she had to serve silently, without question. From the very first day, Aisha had sensed something strange in that house. The staff whispered when Madam walked by. The rooms were too quiet, and Madam, she never smiled, not even once. But what caught Aisha off guard was the way Meher occasionally looked at her, like she was searching for something in her face. It wasn't obvious, just a flicker in her eyes, quickly hidden behind that usual cold expression. One evening, Aisha was cleaning the library, a room she wasn't even supposed to enter. She couldn't help but run her fingers over the shelves of books, breathing in the smell of leather and old pages. A photo frame fell while she was dusting, and when she bent down to pick it up, she saw something that made her freeze. It was an old picture of Meher, younger, smiling, and beside her was a man holding a baby. The woman in the picture looked almost nothing like the sharp, cold Meher of today. There was love in her eyes, and the baby. Something about that baby stirred something deep in Aisha's chest, a memory she didn't even know she had. She quickly placed the photo back and finished her work, but her mind was spinning. That night, lying on the hard mattress in the servant quarters, she closed her eyes and remembered the lullabies her caretaker used to hum, the faint scent of jasmine, the way she once cried about missing her mother, even though she never knew who she was. Days passed. Aisha kept her head down and continued working, but she started noticing more things. Madame always left the dinner table early when Aisha served. Once, she caught her staring through a half-open door, eyes fixed on Aisha, folding laundry, and then there were the sudden mood swings. Madam would go from strict and composed to teary-eyed and silent behind closed doors. A month into the job, Aisha fell seriously ill. Fever, chills, and weakness left her barely able to stand. While the head maid insisted she go rest, Aisha knew there was no one to cover her duties. She pushed herself until she collapsed in the kitchen. When she woke up, she was in a soft bed. Not in the servant quarters, but in one of the guest rooms upstairs. The sheets smelled of lavender, the lights were dimmed, and someone had placed a cold towel on her forehead. And then she saw her, Madame Meher, seated at the edge of the bed, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed, and a strange softness replacing her usual sternness. She didn't say anything. She just sat there, quietly watching Aisha sleep. For the first time, Aisha saw her not as a powerful businesswoman, but as a woman who had known pain. A mother, maybe, or someone who had lost something, or someone. Why am I here? Aisha whispered, her voice hoarse. Meher blinked rapidly, as if pulled from a trance. You fainted. You needed rest. But this room. Why me? Aisha asked again, confused. Maher didn't answer. She stood up abruptly and left the room without a word. That moment planted a seed in Aisha's heart. One she couldn't ignore. Why would Madam herself care for her like that? Why was there a picture of a baby in her library who looked so familiar? And why did she sometimes look at Aisha like she wanted to say something but couldn't? Driven by curiosity and the feeling that something wasn't right, Aisha began to dig deeper. She didn't mean to, but the house was full of hints. A locked drawer, a torn letter, whispers from the older maid who had been around for years. Then, one rainy night, Aisha heard voices in the study. She was passing by when she heard Madam's voice break. Something that had never happened before. I searched for her everywhere. Meher whispered to someone on the phone. They told me she died. They lied. I know she's alive. I can feel it. Aisha stopped breathing. She clutched the tray to her chest. Her heart beat thundering. Was she talking about her own daughter? And then Meher said the words that would haunt Aisha forever. If she's out there, I will find her. No matter what it takes. Aisha stumbled back, unsure if she was shaking from the cold or the realization forming in her mind. Could it be? Could she really be the daughter Madam Meher lost all those years ago? But before she could even make sense of anything, the door creaked behind her. Meher stood there, eyes locked on Aisha, silent, still, her expression unreadable. And in that frozen moment, everything changed. Aisha froze where she stood, the tray slipping from her hands and crashing to the floor with a loud clang. The glass shattered, juice spilling like a broken secret across the marble tiles. But neither she nor Madam Meher moved. They just stared at each other. Two worlds that were never meant to collide, now tangled in something neither could explain. Madam's expression softened for a brief second, then turned cold again. What are you doing here? She asked quietly. I was just passing, Aisha whispered, eyes wide, her voice shaking. I didn't mean to listen. Meher didn't say a word. She glanced at the broken glass on the floor, then slowly turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. Aisha stood alone, heart pounding. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept going back to Madam's voice. They told me she died. They lied. Could she really be the child she lost? The next morning, nothing seemed different. The mansion buzzed with its usual quiet order. Staff moving like shadows. Madam silent at breakfast. No one speaking of the broken glass or the look that passed between her and Aisha. But something had changed. Aisha felt it in the way Madam glanced at her during meals, in the way she stopped the headmaid from scolding Aisha for being late, in the way she left a bowl of hot soup outside her door when she couldn't eat. Still, no one said a word, and the silence was worse than the truth. That week, Aisha kept searching for answers, for proof, for anything that could explain this strange connection. She found an old photo album hidden behind stacks of books in the study, dusty, untouched, filled with black and white pictures of a younger Meher, laughing, holding a baby, standing beside a man Aisha had never seen before. One photo was torn down the middle. Aisha turned to the oldest maid, Nani Jahan Ara, the only one in the house who spoke to her with a little kindness. Nani, Can I ask you something? Aisha said one evening, her voice low. Nani looked at her carefully. What is it, child? That photo in the study. The baby in Madam's arms. Do you know who it is? Nani sighed deeply. Some things are better left buried, Betty. But what if I need to know? What if it's about me? Nani's eyes widened, her hands trembling slightly. She leaned in closer, whispering, 20 years ago, Madame gave birth to a daughter. It was a scandal. She was young, unmarried, and her family forced her to give the child away. They told her the baby died, but I heard whispers that she was alive, that someone took her, far away. Aisha's breath caught in her throat. Why didn't Madame look for her? She did, for years. But with time, her heart grew cold. She built an empire, but she never healed. Tears welled up in Aisha's eyes. The puzzle pieces were slowly fitting together. Could she really be that baby? But how could she ask? How could she go up to a woman like Madame Meher and say, I think you're my mother? While this storm raged inside her, another one was brewing. In the house, Meher's younger brother, Kamal, had returned from abroad. Charming, clever, and always up to something, Kamal was everything Meher was not. Loud, flashy, and dangerous behind his smile. He took an odd interest in Aisha, too curious, too friendly. You're not just a maid, are you? He said one evening as she passed him tea. There's something about you. Aisha avoided his gaze, unsure of what he meant. Later, she overheard him on the phone. If she finds out the truth, I'm finished. That girl is a threat. Now there was a new layer of fear. Someone new. And someone didn't want the truth to come out. Kamal had always resented Meher's success. She controlled the company, the wealth, and the legacy their father left behind. If it turned out her lost daughter was alive and standing right in front of them, she would inherit everything, and Kamal would lose his grip. The tension in the house grew. Meher became more distant, Kamal more aggressive. One night, Aisha found her things scattered in the staff room. Her clothes torn, her books ripped. You don't belong here, one of the other maids said bitterly. You think you're special just because Madame looks at you. Aisha felt the walls closing in. The mansion, once a strange but silent place, had now turned hostile. She had no proof of anything, just questions and fear. One night, unable to hold it in any longer, Aisha slipped into the study where Meher was working. Her hands were shaking, her voice barely a whisper. Madam, I think I'm your daughter. The pen in Meher's hand dropped. Silence filled the room like a heavy fog. What did you say? She asked, her voice tight. I don't have proof. I found the photo. I remember Jasmine from when I was a baby. The lullaby Nani used to hum. It's the same one I heard in my dreams. And you look at me like you know. Meher stood up slowly, her face unreadable. She walked toward Aisha and for the first time reached out, gently tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. I've known from the beginning, she whispered. I felt it the moment I saw you, but I was too afraid. What if I was wrong? What if I hurt you again? Tears spilled down Aisha's cheeks. You didn't hurt me. You saved me, just by being here. But the moment didn't last. A loud crash echoed from the hallway. Kamal burst in, eyes wild. I knew it, he spat. She's here to take everything. Meher stepped in front of Aisha, shielding her. She's my daughter Kamal, and you will not touch her. But Kamal wasn't done. He pulled out an envelope. DNA test, he said, waving it. I got suspicious. Had the test done behind your back. You want the truth? Aisha and Meher both stared at the envelope. Everything was about to change. The truth was inside, and none of them were ready for it. A deep silence filled the room, as Kamal held out the envelope like a weapon. a cruel smirk on his face. Meher's hands trembled as she reached for it, her eyes locking with Aisha's. In that moment, the past, the pain, and the years lost all hung between them like a thick curtain of fog. Aisha wasn't sure what scared her more, the truth or the possibility that everything she felt in her heart might be wrong. With slow fingers, Meher opened the envelope and pulled out the neatly folded sheet. Her eyes scanned the words, her lips moving silently. Then a single tear rolled down her cheek. She looked up at Aisha, her voice barely a whisper. "It's true, you're mine." Aisha stood frozen, her world shifting under her feet. She had imagined this moment in so many ways, dreamed of it quietly every night. But now that it was real, she couldn't speak. Meher stepped forward and wrapped her arms around her, holding her close, like a mother who had spent her whole life searching for a part of herself. "I'm sorry," Meher whispered. "I should have found you sooner." Aisha buried her face in Meher's shoulder, tears soaking her clothes. "You found me now. That's enough." But Kamal wasn't done. His voice cut through the quiet moment like a knife. "Do you really think it's that simple? You're going to throw me aside for a maid?" Meher turned to him, her gaze sharper than ever. "She's not just a maid, she's my daughter. And you've been lying, manipulating, trying to destroy the one thing that matters to me." Kamal's face twisted in anger. "You built everything because you had nothing. And now you'll hand it over to some girl who doesn't know anything about this world." "She'll learn," Meher replied calmly. "And she'll do it with heart. Something you never had." The words hit Kamal harder than any slap. For the first time, he looked small, defeated. He tried to speak, but couldn't find the words. Meher walked past him and picked up the photo album Aisha had found earlier. She gently placed the torn picture of herself and the baby on the table. "I kept this all these years," she said softly. "Even when they told me you were gone, I couldn't throw it away. A part of me always knew you were out there." Aisha smiled through her tears. "Maybe that's why I ended up here." Fate. Over the next few days, the mood in the mansion shifted completely. The staff, once cold, began to treat Aisha with a new respect. Not because she was the lost daughter of the house, but because they saw her strength, her kindness, and how she carried herself with quiet grace. Meher introduced Aisha as her daughter publicly. The media picked up the story, calling it the billionaire's hidden heiress. Photos of Aisha and Meher started making headlines, and people couldn't stop talking about the poor girl who once worked as a maid and turned out to be the daughter of one of the richest women in the country. But for Aisha, the real win wasn't the money or the fame. It was waking up in a place that finally felt like home. It was having someone call her Beta with love, not pity. It was knowing who she was and where she came from. Kamal was quietly removed from the company. Meher didn't press charges, but she made it clear he was no longer welcome in her home or her business. "Family is earned, not forced," she told him. In time, Aisha took a small role in Meher's charity foundation, helping underprivileged girls get access to education and better lives. A cause close to her heart. She didn't want the boardrooms or luxury right away. She wanted to help others like her. Girls who were ignored, forgotten, or judged too soon. She never forgot where she came from. She still helped the house staff with chores sometimes. Still laughed with Nani Jahan Ara over evening tea, and still walked barefoot in the garden where she once used to sweep leaves. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky golden, Aisha sat beside Meher on the balcony. "I used to think being poor was a curse," Aisha said quietly, "but now I know it gave me something money never could: strength. Mayher took her hand and squeezed it. And now you have both, strength and love. Their eyes met, and in that shared silence, everything made sense. The story of a poor girl working as a maid who discovered her birth mother was a billionaire wasn't just about luck or a twist of fate. It was about hope, about never giving up, and about the power of truth, no matter how long it takes to come out. And most of all, it was a reminder that sometimes the family we're looking for is looking for us too. The end.